To unpack the misinformation minefield, I'd love to welcome to the stage Dr. Danielle McMullen, the current president of the Australian Medical Association, Sarah Moran, co-founder of Girl Geek Academy, and Dr. Devini Ameratunga, medical director of Life Fertility Clinic. If you can come to the stage for me. Thank you.
Oh yeah, good. That works. Yeah, that works. Yep. Okay. Excellent.
We're even in the right order.
Well, hello everybody again. We wanted to show the video just to try to present as many examples as we could within kind of one confined little space. So it really just gives a feel for what we do confront day to day in our reels. And one other thing about what we just showed there is that it's not necessarily done with any kind of ill intent either. You could probably see some of the vulnerability or the passion in their voices. That's when we're talking about misinformation. And I think that I do want to highlight that quickly, that misinformation and disinformation being two quite different things. So misinformation being inaccurate or misleading information that is spread without intent to harm, and disinformation being deliberately providing false information that's shared with the intent to deceive or manipulate. The latter being more insidious, but both being, I guess, up there equally problematic, and especially when we consider in spaces commonly associated with women's health, especially in fertility and reproductive health as well, how much it can really prey on vulnerability and hope and fear and lead to increased anxieties and even lead to just us spending money on just stuff we really do not need. And I think we can think of some really high profile examples out there. Also, just to note the role of trust as well, especially when trust in the health system is already low, how people in different communities can feel particularly vulnerable to this. And we did have Nayuka Gori she was going to be joining the panel, and I know that they're particularly passionate about this topic, and we will go back and I know they had some really great points on this subject, particularly among First Nations communities. So we'll tap into that and share that on Women's Agenda separately. So thank you to Sarah, who was able to fill in at the last minute. So thank you very much, Sarah, for being here. Okay, so I want to start by asking each of our panellists if you can share an example of some of the most absurd health-related misinformation that you've come across. It could be on social media, from a family member, friend, anywhere. Danielle, do you want to start?
I'm still in shock from the video. I mean, it's just, I sit there, like I felt sick. I did thankfully have a bit of warning and saw it a couple of days ago, and just felt sick at some of the things that are out there. I mean, tampons causing infertility, like, no thank you. And if that little brush that I use for your pap smear causes damage, then none of us can ever have sex again, because I'm pretty sure bumping uglies causes like a fair bit more damage. I meant to bring one of the brushes to show you that it's literally like this soft plastic brush, and so
I need to take off my bra as well.
I know,
I'm worried about it.
And it's just, so there goes from the absurd to the dangerous, because the most dangerous I've been hearing lately is the fears around contraception leading to infertility. And we've seen demonstrable increases in unintended pregnancies as a consequence of that, both here and in the UK. Then young women are kind of hearing this stuff, getting scared about their fertility down the track, but they don't want a baby now, but they go off their contraceptives without having a conversation, and then are stuck in the position of having to have a conversation about a termination of pregnancy, which I'm happy to have, but really, I mean, prevention is better than cure, right? And so that's just heartbreaking when that's happening.
Dr. Dev, to hear from you.
I guess I see it all, from the dangerous to the whimsical, I suppose, that if you have sex during a certain time of your cycle, date, time, that you'll get a boy, or, a girl and things like that, positions after sex to, create a certain gender, or, legs up after all these kinds of things, to the same that, recently in the last 48 hours, so many things I've been seeing on social media, get rid of AMH. That's not the conversations, it should be about understanding that men's health doesn't really matter, men's age doesn't matter with fertility. And what I saw yesterday was someone had put up that 40s are your best time for having children. You know, like they can really be misguided.
Don't let your husband put his laptop on his lap because you'll wreck his his testicles.
Yeah. There's lots and lots.
Okay, Sarah, do you have an example of I sprung that one on too? I feel like you'd see plenty of stuff.
Well, you know, you were shocked at that video, but that's just my TikTok feed. I'm like, yeah, I know all these people. And so for me, and you're all laughing because you're on the same boat. But one that I saw yesterday was from Kristen Drysdale, who used to host The Checkout, who'd come across this idea that we consume 1 credit card worth of microplastics a week. And her bullshit detector went, I don't know about that. But there was a study that actually determined that was the case, and it was from the University of Newcastle, and it was published by the World Wide Fund here in Australia. Turns out it wasn't true, and it has been debunked, but the problem that we see is that it's a good story, isn't it? Like, you can grapple with credit card, microplastics bad, in our body, sure, sounds about right. It's actually, it would take you something like 50,000 years to get, that's not the right figure, by the way, that's my misinformation. But it is, you know, it is such a minuscule figure that you would never actually end up with a credit card worth of microplastics in your body. But it's the idea of once it's out there, what happens? And so that was one that really took me for it.
You could swallow a credit card.
Right.
Maybe that would help you get there. So just to hear from our 2 doctors on the panel. So what can you just share a comment on why women's health you think is such a target for misinformation? Why this space?
I think it's multifactorial, really. There's, you know, as we've heard today, systemic things that contribute to this. Traditionally, research has been based on men. Women are very underrepresented in a lot of the data that we have, which is slowly changing. A lot of the advice we've been given is by, you know, medical practitioners or health people who are men. And not that I've got nothing against, obviously, men, but maybe they don't have that deeper understanding because of the systemic issues that we have. So I think there are lots of reasons why, unfortunately, and I guess I'll start about the whole thing, and Danielle, you might say more about individual.
You're right. I mean, women have been disenfranchised by the health system for decades, and we're at a time of reckoning now where we're standing up and going, no, hang on, we do need to be seen and heard in the system. But that's why it's a target, because there is, as you say, that lack of kind of system-wide evidence, and there has been poor treatment of women in the health system over the years. And then also I think there's that layer that often the symptoms that we suffer can be difficult to see. As we just heard in the previous panel, if there's nothing tangible, like when someone's bleeding from their limb, you can see that, you can hold it, you can, it's visible and it's tangible. A lot of symptoms in women's health are hidden, whether it's pain or fatigue or cognitive symptoms, sleeplessness, challenges even with your menstrual cycle. Like, a lot of that is hard to unpick, and there's a lot of stuff happening in your pelvis, and even as a health professional, I can't always tell you whether it's your guts, whether it's your uterus, whether it's your ovaries, or if it's the muscles and bones kind of in that region. It is genuinely hard to pull it apart. But having that conversation as a health professional where I can have the confidence to say, I don't know, but I will help you find the answer, that's a professional shift we've had to take, and it requires a fair bit of partnership and not kind of a transactional interaction where you kind of expect to just go in with a list of things and have it figured out all at once.
And less paternalism, really, and more of, you know, involvement and empowerment, and all of those things are slowly changing, but traditionally they haven't been there.
Is it the way that it's changing, is that, I mean, you see a lot of the examples that we just saw, it might be from people who do consider themselves feeling somewhat empowered to be able to share that information with their audience. So is it kind of going both ways there, and possibly leading to some positive there, that people might go and have a conversation with a GP? Or
Yeah, I think it's a two-edged sword. I think it's great that we're having the conversation, but also it can lead to further problems. The same as, whatever technologies, AIs, it's great. We need to embrace it, but there needs to be some checks, and that is slowly emerging as an issue. We've got Netflix dramas on these things where people have pretended to be this and that, and, social media has no qualification. You can say whatever you want and you can believe whatever you want, and I think that's something that needs to be changed.
Sometimes there is a grain of truth in a lot of the misinformation that's out there, and I think we see that in a lot of science reporting and a lot of kind of the information. There's a little bit of something that's a bit true, but then it gets extrapolated either out of that person being unaware, or sometimes there's hidden agendas that then expand that information beyond its level of truth. So just being a kind of having that second question of like, all right, what is this information trying to give to me? What conversation could it open? But being mindful of also, I think a lot of behind a bunch of social media is money too, and trying to sell a quick fix when there is no quick fix. I wish there was to a lot of challenges in women's health, but probably if it sounds too good to be true, it may well be.
Yeah, I thought Gwyneth Paltrow had like a quick fix. There was some sort of product there that looked really handy, but apparently not. Sarah, so we've brought up tech, and I know that the reason why I thought Sarah would be good to stand in, she will be moderating the ADHD panel later on, but is because Sarah regularly does commentate on tech in the media, and I thought that this is really a tech issue. Not only a tech issue, misinformation, disinformation has been around for a lot longer than the tech that we use now, and the platforms that we're using now. We can go back kind of hundreds of years and to see examples of where it has been used in ways that are quite convenient, I might say, to the current setup, or quite convenient to men, I think, at the time. But Sarah, let's talk about the responsibility of the tech platforms. But before we get there, we were sharing a bit of an example just outside, talking about the AI overviews that you get in Google now, which I've got a lot to say on that from a media perspective, and running an independent media entity. But leaving that aside, I mean, think about how we ask these questions and we get this really quick answer. And if you're searching for ingredients or something for something that you're cooking, it might be okay that it's only 95% correct. But when you're searching for other information, it's not okay that it's even somewhat possibly incorrect. So what would you say about that issue?
Yes.
And I think you had an example of that as well.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, I was teaching 2,000 girls AI skills as part of a career development piece. And I asked them to search for information, and I could see all their screens. I knew the answer, and up were coming up all the AI overviews with incorrect responses, and they just went, "Oh yeah, miss, the answer's this." And I was like, you just read the AI overview. You didn't even try to think whether that was correct. And I had never seen it so vividly in front of me, that young people are just believing, people used to believe whatever came up on Google, but it is literally Google propagating that misinformation. And I think that's something that we're very much going to be faced with. At the same time, those AI overviews are also stopping people from clicking through to websites, and we're seeing that by a massive drop in actual traffic to legitimate websites. So not only do we think, oh yeah, surely people will verify that information, search traffic tells us they're literally not. And so people aren't verifying whether something is true, and that's going to have an impact. Particularly, I'm concerned about the next generation not being taught to verify whether information is true.
And a lot of the LLMs are also trained on Reddit data.
Yeah.
So this is people going in and sharing their personal experiences. And you know what? There could be something in that for certain cases. But what happens there in terms of LLMs and the information dished out? Because we've mentioned AI overviews, but it goes a lot deeper than that. It's also to how people will use the voice-activated AI, where it's actually even harder to look up other sources through that too.
Yeah, and so I mean, the main thing that a lot of us have heard about what data is trained on is we know that it's scraped from a lot of artists, a lot of different, publicly available information, and it's taken a lot away from people's copyright. But yes, the other information that these models are trained on is publicly available bullshit, really. So being able to scrape Reddit and scrape different groups has definitely trained the LLMs to guess what the next word will be, and often that in the same way search used to push certain websites to the top, it's pushing certain information to the top in the LLM. For myself, where I faced an interesting challenge was I do look up the health information, but then I verify it, which is, go have a chat with the GP or look up stuff further. But for me, I was looking for information. It was giving me American terminology. And so then I'm like, oh, it's this. And do you think I could find an Australian doctor who would treat this American symptom? So for me, that was really eye-opening as well, is to think how biased that information is to San Francisco-based men who built the technology in the first place.
I think you raised an interesting point, like sort of the flavour went in there of, you mentioned personal experience. And I think it's important that we don't invalidate that, and actually the sharing that's now allowed and possible across technological platforms for people to share their experiences is really important, because that is a layer to your health experience of understanding what your friends and family and relatives and complete strangers have been through. But we've got to have transparency about what is personal experience, what is expert opinion, what is scientifically backed data, like building that literacy of what are the different types of health, because they're all health information, but they're different types of health information. And then when we've got sources like the AI thing at the top that just pushes it all together, or you've got other platforms where personal experience is then kind of promoted as this is what it'll be like for everyone, that's where I think a lot of the risk and the challenge comes. It makes it really hard to be a woman out there reading something like, I don't know what to believe. People are feeling really lost because it's hard to know what is the source of truth and what should I know about my health.
Dr. Dev, I know that you often respond to different things in the media when there's sort of a trend in a topic. And not to say that this is misinformation, but I think it does build on what Danielle is saying there as well. Say the topic of menopause, lots of media attention right now, which is amazing. Everyone's really happy with that. It is bringing it to the fore. We're finally having conversations about something that was almost just not discussed, even only a few years ago. But that can also lead people to think that maybe symptoms that they're having are just menopause symptoms or perimenopause, and therefore not to go and see a doctor about them. How are you seeing that at all, where these things do get so much prominence in the media and then filter through to social media, possibly then become vulnerable to misinformation as well?
Yeah, and I think both ways. People come in with, I'll give you an example, PCOS patients who think they're in menopause, or vice versa, menopausal patients who've actually got PCOS. I think, one topic is the be-all and end-all for a bit of time, and people just see things in them. And especially, like Danielle said, many of our symptoms are quite broad across many of the different, pathologies or whatever. So yes, I do see that, but I also see the opposite. Well, it can be good and bad. Everyone wants to be on hormones sometimes. We've been for years saying hormones are okay. It's okay to be on the pill for this. It's okay to take HRT. Those studies were flawed. We all know that in the medical community. And now it's the opposite. I think I'm in menopause. I think I need estrogen. So it's just battling that and individualising. But I have the privilege of people coming to see me because they want to see me. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't have to sit there and preach about it. People actually want to learn, and it's quite a nice thing to be involved in someone's care and to be able to, they can take it or leave it. Whereas I think it's harder for, primary practitioners, because they often have to see the gamut, and whether patients want to be there or not, they must see a GP before they can go on to, So I think, yes, exactly what you said, that media certainly provokes certain elements within the community.
Well, let's go to GPs then. So from an AMA perspective, how do you see misinformation shaping the doctor-patient relationship?
Yeah, and so some of this, the AMA is all doctors in all specialties, but I'm a GP in my day job, so it's close to home for my day-to-day practice as well. It does, again, the earlier panel talked about, these things take the time that they take, and yet our health system is built, our structure, particularly in general practice, is really built towards short consultations. The funding, the Medicare rebates for a shorter consultation far outweigh the relative rebate for if you need that longer consultation. And I don't mean hours and hours, but if you just want to spend 20, 25 minutes with the GP really unpicking an issue, that's poorly rebated in comparison, and it breaks down, and we know it's hard to get into a GP, and that out-of-pocket costs have been growing because nothing's kept pace with actually the delivery of trying to build that team that delivers care. And so there's a lot of pressure to do everything really fast, and I think that breaks down that relationship, and unpicking some of the myths takes time, it takes trust, it takes a conversation, because as you said, it's about working together. We don't want to sit there and like try and tell people how to do stuff. It's really about exploring what's important to you, what have you heard, what are you worried about. I'm seeing more and more women that come in apologetic that they don't already have the answer. They're like, oh, I've tried and I don't know what's going on and I'm really sorry. I was like, what are you sorry for? That's my job. Like, come in, we talk, and together we figure out what the answer is. You don't need to have it all figured out. Like, that's why we're here in this together. But it's a weird state, and so it's made that doctor-patient relationship trickier, because we're not well supported to take the time that it now needs to have that kind of modern interactive relationship and to unpick all the junk that you're faced with every day on the computer at home before you even get to the office.
Yeah. Sarah, let's back to big tech. Who's responsible for this? How are we going to change it? Where does it go from here? I mean, because I feel, we have these conversations and we can put all these things in places to protect ourselves, but the tech keeps getting better and the algorithm keeps getting fed to be tailored to what we want.
Yep. Before we do that, I just want to tag off the back of this, and I will segue, I promise. So yes, I'm the co-founder of Girl Geek Academy, but I also run a company called Patient Notes. So thank you, and yes, I see customers. So what has been an interesting experience for me over the last 2 years. So we use AI to summarise the clinical notes of a professional, and then it's a draft, and they must check it before they sign it off. But what that means is I'm seeing how different professions, how long their consults are, and what they're able to convey during those consults, because we create prompt templates for their sessions. And yeah, one of the heartbreaking things for me was how quickly doctors have to service the consult. Means that my product is less useful, because you're able to type your notes in the 15 minutes and away you go. Whereas the allied health, what I thought was like, oh, they seem to be bearing a lot of the burden of the education. Because if you go to see a physio and they're massaging your back or whatever, they chat to you while they do it. And so you're having that conversation and building that trust in a way that perhaps in shorter consults you don't get the opportunity to do. So for me, I was like, oh, I really wish people could have longer GP consults and be able to get that education piece from the source that is most important. And then in terms of the actual big tech, that's part of the reason I became an AI co-founder, was because there aren't enough women building that technology. So the root of the problem, when you have ridiculous technology ideas, you go to venture capitalists, and only 3% of the world's venture capital goes to women. So if you have a world-breaking idea around how to solve some of these problems, you have to convince a rich person to give it to you. Most of the rich people are men. And then you've only got a 3% chance of getting your idea funded. Whereas
2% last year.
Yes, no, it does go up and down. Yes, it was a depressing year last year, 2%. Very heartbreaking. I know you keep a cross bench. I
15% if you have a male co-founder.
Yes.
But yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons I haven't raised venture capital, is because I'm like, yeah, I know it's like not a high chance that I could be bothered doing that. And so then what we have is this centralization of who is building these LLMs, who is building this technology, and what decisions will they be able to make. Now, if you think about Facebook, it began as hot or not. It was literally Mark Zuckerberg who scraped the pictures of women off campus to be able to create hot or not things. But the problem with moderating on Facebook at the moment is that they've cut all their moderators, they've cut all their staff. So what are we left with? How do we go and protest Mark Zuckerberg? Good bloody luck.
Touched on the fakes. P.S. There's fake versions of me on Facebook. I don't actually sell weird bee pollen lotions. And,
have you been targeted for that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had family members call me and say, hey, do you really believe, is this stuff actually good? I was like, what on earth are you talking about? But yeah, because I've got, and so there's 2 or 3 versions of me. Good luck trying to get I mean, I shouldn't say this, I have a meeting with Meta next week and hopefully we'll finally resolve this issue. But there's fake versions. There's been quite prominent doctors, Norman Swan, there's fake videos of him.
Yeah, I've seen his.
So not only is there kind of, these genuine people maybe trying their best to share information that might be a bit misguided, but there's also just complete fabrication of prominent figures who might otherwise be trustworthy. So you go, well, maybe also check that they're saying something that you think they would really be saying.
And there's money to be made in that, right? Yeah. So if someone's paying to promote that message, what incentive does Meta have to turn it off?
Yeah.
And I feel like from Dr. Norman Swan, it did take him a while, I think, from the story from that it did. And we've seen that in other examples as well, particularly in the business community, of telling people to buy certain, that they're suggesting certain shares to buy and things like that, which just is complete fabrication. It's just made up deep fakes. So, and that is quite, it is money to be made from Meta's point of view, but also, I mean, this is, it's just outright intentional, cowboys out there. Like this, it's not even disinformation, it's something else. It's just a disgusting money grab. So I want to get back to misinformation and to talk about, again, to the idea of misinformation being about this, where it's not necessarily intentional. I think that's an interesting note to point with it. And that is, so what are some of the tactics that all of you use to, strategies that can actually work to change somebody's mind once that misinformation has taken hold? Because it's not easy. I won't start with you, Sarah, because I feel I would have sprung that one on you. So.
I think the good thing about modern medicine is being in partnership with your patient. I don't ever push, I used to deliver babies and I used to be very, very stressed about, the woman who comes in with high-risk pregnancy, twins, and the women's are trained in Melbourne, and, barricading the door for doctors not to come in. It used to, I would be like, oh my God, but the babies will die, and all these kind of things. And I soon changed over the last 15 years to, I think knowledge is power, and my job is not to convince people on a social media platform, even though I try, I'm terrible at it. But my job is to be that nerd, to know that, this paper, and my job is to just put that in front of the patient and say, but this is your life, and what is important to you, you need to take that into context. So I give examples, I give the facts, and then I put the onus on the patient. And I think that works way better than me telling patients what to do. So, it's about empowering, and I think there's true power in empowering someone else.
I think creating the space to have conversations about this stuff. People are sometimes shy to share what they've seen online. And so if you kind of open that up and be like, well, hey, what else have you seen out there? What are you hearing? What's happening? Sometimes, again, it's a bit preventative if people aren't out there, having chats about, well, if there's something that sounds too good to be true, come and talk first. And I say that both individually and at a big public level, that it's probably too good to be true, it is, but go have a chat and talk about what you're seeing, because just keeping it hidden doesn't help. And I think that experience of what you get back in a one-on-one interaction will vary, but we really are working hard across our profession to try and build that partnership approach. You said our training now, we spend just as much time on communication and interaction and understanding patient journeys as we do on the clinical and technical side. So hopefully we can geek out on the inside but appear to be ordinary humans on the outside.
Yes. Sarah?
So probably 2 points. I think it's probably from practice with young people, but working out why they're believing that information in the first place. Like I instinctively look for 10 different sources around something, but we don't all have the time to do that, or the idea that we think something might need verifying. And so walking through that process with people and saying, well, why? To what Wendy said earlier, asking someone, why do you believe that? Why? And challenging them, but then also thinking about where is their need to believe that misinformation coming from? And you spoke before about different spaces online. I think women need gossip to feel safe. So gossip has always been taught as something that's a dangerous word. But the idea of us having communities and places to turn to and other women to turn to has kept us safe generationally for years and years and years, and will keep us safe for years to come. But maybe that person's in the wrong community. You know, maybe they're looking in the wrong space, and it's in a community that propagates misinformation. So how can you redirect that person to a safer space where they're actually getting the correct information that they need?
Excellent. Okay. Well, you may have actually just answered this, but we've got 1.5 minutes left. Any final tip, maybe for everyone in the room, how we can empower ourselves and others in our lives, especially young women, to critically assess information and feel confident with how they're approaching their health? A very quick answer. Oh my God, Danielle.
It's just that opening, looking at lots of sources, keeping an open mind and asking lots of questions. And I think trying to delay for as long as possible having that fixed idea about what a health solution is until you've kind of gotten information from a variety of sources.
Excellent. Okay, Dev?
Mine's similar, I guess. Just beware of your bias and what your feeds show you, and qualify them. It's good to get information from a variety of different sources, but remember to always seek, I guess, the person or people that not just experience but may actually know some facts, and that's similar.
Sarah?
If I was speaking to a young person, I'd encourage them to keep their own records about their health, because I know when I was a young person, and even more recently, I'm just like, oh, that'll be in the system somewhere. And all the doctors will have read everything that's in the system, and they'll tell me, and they'll be like, knock, knock, hey, Sarah, guess what? This is what's wrong with you. But that's not how it works, and that's how people then become shocked, and they go, oh, no one told me. Well, keep your own records so that you can verify your own information against stuff that you've been told in the past.
And have a regular GP, we can help. But you're right, writing your own stuff down. But a regular
Remember when we spoke about? Yeah.
Thank you to our 3 panellists. We are going to be getting lunch, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, that's great.